Yes. You can use that.
Hey, excellent. Great, we'll start our meeting today. Happy to see so many faces around the table, familiar faces, following our orientation session. Here's our first official committee meeting, 2024. Here we go. Yeah. I know everybody received a copy of the agenda on Monday. There've been a couple of changes, but I think we'll just work our way through stuff.
Okay, yeah, we'll be removing the delegation, that will come off. We're also going to remove the minutes. Those are coming off too, and no questions accepted on that.
So just maybe just starting then with the approval of agenda as is, for the delegations as amended. Yeah. Somebody like to move? Ryan first, Martin second, thank you. Right. And moving on then, so.
We're not adopting.
No, we're not adopting the minutes and public comments. Are there any?
One here, and I don't have anyone in the Zoom room.
No. Zoom room? Never heard of that before. Nobody in the Zoom room.
No one in the Zoom room.
Okay, Zoom room empty.
I missed why we're not adopting the minutes.
We're not adopting the minutes because I attached my verbatim draft instead of the cleaned up draft.
Oh, okay.
So now everybody knows. Great.
Sorry, I sort of whispered it.
And so we'll catch it next time.
Yeah.
We'll catch up a little bit next time.
Yeah.
They were a good reminder. I was like, I can't remember, but then with your notes, oh, yeah.
Actually, I did find them more helpful.
Yes, exactly. Let's see, now we're talking about it, this is mortifying. So, like, does it say anything? I will honestly say like, oh my, I can't reach my sprout. Like, sometimes it said little things.
It followed like normally the minutes are, very high level. And so these were more detailed. So given that it was 6 months ago, it refreshed my memory a bit about, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. They're not gonna be like that.
Yeah, sometimes minutes seem to be cryptic. So sometimes when you see the notes and you go, oh yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot about it, don't worry.
Okay, all good, all good. Okay, so moving along, so no public comments. Delegation, that too has been amended to remove. Hopefully we'll be looking at delegations next meeting. So then moving on to council referrals. Specifically short-term rental policy review. Daniel Martin will be giving us a little presentation, walking through all of the details. Welcome, Martin.
Great, thank you. Yes, I have a presentation. I'll just put it on the screen. Thank you for having me here. It's great. I don't think I've presented to this committee in a little while, so it's nice to be here. Those who don't know me, my name is Daniel Martin. I'm the Manager of Planning and Development here with the municipality. So what I have today is a referral from council, so on a short-term rentals review. So by way of overview, in 2019, Bowen adopted our short-term rental policy. And that envisioned the permitting of what we call residential guest accommodation. And that's essentially the short-term rental of a complete dwelling for a period of up to 120 days in a year. So my report and the report to council has some more of the background in there, but essentially Bowen, for as far back as we could track, has always allowed some sort of like bed and breakfast use where somebody lives in a dwelling and they rent out rooms to overnight accommodation. And then we've often had sort of informal use of essentially, what you may call a vacation rental or rental of an entire dwelling, but it's never been permitted. So in 2019, we did a project, we did outreach and workshops and consultation, and eventually ended with council adopting that policy, which was then enacted in the land use bylaw in 2020 to make it legal and permit the use. And at the time, the direction was to come back and report to council on how that policy, how the enactment of that policy was going essentially. But the timing of it was kind of funny in that it was adopted in 2020 and focused on a complete shutdown of every overnight accommodation. And so it's been a little bit, trying to evaluate it. It's hard to sort of decouple the things from like, okay, what's the effect of the policy versus, bigger COVID stuff. And then this last fall, the province adopted a bill that's Bill 35, the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act, which has quite significant, large changes to the short-term rental market and marketplace in BC. And in particular for this report and this process, we're focusing on the act has a new restriction, would restrict short-term rental accommodations to only when it's in a principal residence or a secondary suite of a property that is a principal residence. So they have a definition. I think I go later what the principal residence definition is. But in essence, Bowen as a smaller community is exempt from this requirement, but there is an ability for smaller communities to seek, to request the province to opt into the requirement, in which case it would come into effect. And so one of the things council wanted to consider is to consider whether or not to opt in. There's a deadline of March 31st each year. And so thinking as part of the review of the policy, it's deciding, okay, is that a step that we want to take? So just for those who maybe aren't as familiar, this is the overview just of what the current regulations are on Bowen. So what's in our short-term rental policy. So if you have a property on Bowen, there's different forms that you could make that property available as a rental. So it can be a long-term rental that's more than 30 days, so essentially a long-term tenant in the space. And then we sort of ask, is it an entire dwelling? So we allow what's called a bed and breakfast use, and that's renting out of rooms within a dwelling or within accessory buildings on a property. When it's a home occupation, so somebody's living in the property and they're making rooms available on a nightly basis. And then we allow the use, it's called residential guest accommodation, and that's renting an entire dwelling on a property on a short-term basis. And so we permit that in dwellings, but that maximum of 120 days a year. And then we have some limited zoning on the island that allows what we kind of term as commercial guest accommodations. That's a commercial operation where they're renting things overnight. So, and then this is just some of our numbers that again, that get complicated to analyze in terms of the COVID impact. So Bowen started requiring business licenses in 2019 and we permitted short-term rentals or residential guest accommodation in 2020. Partway through the year. So in terms of full years of data, we have these 3 years and we see quite significant, increase in the number of licenses. But it's hard to know without having numbers from 2018, 2019. It's like, is this entirely new growth or is this like a V-shaped marketplace on Bowen? And that 2019, there were licenses that went away or businesses that went away in COVID and then have come back.
What is your sense? Is that a backlog from the bylaw being enacted, getting, people actually getting business licenses and just catching up, or is that real growth?
I remember when we looked at it from 2021 to 2022, we did definitely do analysis on like, which ones do we think that we were better at capturing? So we use a short-term rental monitoring company called Hamari that like scours Airbnb and VRBO and other online listings, and then we can identify listings and we can contact people about the need for business licenses. And so I think from 2021 to 2022, we saw 40 more RGA licenses. We figured like half of those were new and half were us finding ones that we hadn't found before. And then probably then to 2023 is 15 more. Those are probably new. And so this is just another, this is Hamari showing from 2020 and showing this growth.
So, I have just a couple of things, and I know I talked with you about this last year about the licenses. A lot of people see the licenses that didn't start until the licensing 2019, and then my memory of, because of COVID, there was no enforcement of licenses because there was higher priorities. And then I think somewhere around maybe 2021, the municipality started to, enforce and monitor those kinds of things. So I just want to make sure that we don't assume that the licenses are, because this is what a lot of people think. I've seen people making that the number of short-term vacation rentals or RGAs have increased substantially, which is not actually the case.
But that should abstract away from that because that's listings, not licenses.
But I also, so the second part of what I wanted to bring up was I worked with Emma for the MRDT application. And so I know, and I've seen data that she must have gotten the data because she certainly had the estimate of how much the MRDT would bring in. So, and I've seen the HOMI, so there must be before that, the data as well, because she was using Mari to do the estimates and things like that.
Yeah, I think Hamar gave us an estimate, and then I think we had one from Airbnb. And my memory from that time is like getting numbers of like 160. Something in that.
Yeah, I didn't record the actual number,
Yeah.
but I know that must be somewhere. Because she's also like at her final report and stuff, we estimate that the MRDT would bring in between, I think, 42,000 or 58,000.
Yeah.
So that's gotta be based on some numbers there,
Yeah.
and values and stuff.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is I think that data is there prior to that.
Yeah, and I think there is, I think it's not necessarily as consistent.
Oh.
Data points, but.
Oh, no, definitely with the license,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I'm seeing people misunderstanding that the increase in licenses from there means the total increase that we're, you know, and I don't think that's necessarily.
No, and I agree, I don't think it's fully the case. I do think that there are more now than in 2019.
Well, it'd be interesting if we looked at Emma's data. I would love to see that, yeah.
But if you filter them out, there's an increase. So it's not only administration, it's also.
There's a real increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just to go over this again, so this is then just looking at those RGA licenses, so not the B&Bs, but specifically the residential guest accommodation ones. And then we took essentially a look for council at saying, okay, based on what we have, do we think that they would be impacted by a principal resident requirement? And so this is just looking at like the owner name, that like the address, and then looking at the property information. Is like, is that person like address defined as their home? So it's like an approximation, but we found that essentially 57% of the listings, it was somebody's principal residence, and 41% it was not the principal resident. Yeah, and then the report too, we looked at some of the ways that communities regulate short-term rental. Trying to give like a nice, simple synopsis for council in terms of what communities do. We found that it's not that straightforward, that there's a myriad of different ways that people regulate them. And what we found interesting too is that places will have different streams of permitting based on the principal residence requirements. So some places, like on the Sunshine Coast, they will say, like it's permitted to have a short-term rental if you're the principal resident for a set number of days, and if it's not, then like in Gibson's, then it's only permitted with a temporary use permit. You have to separately seek permission for it. Some places like Penticton, we found just basically permit it in all residential zones. Some place, we permit it in residential zones with a number of days limit. Some places permit it to a maximum number in a community. There's a big range of how people do it based on sort of what their communities decide is an appropriate way to regulate.
Do you have any sense of how compliant the existing business licenses are with the 120-day limit? So we have data from Hamari that will list the number of review days. And so I believe last year there were a couple license plates that we sent notices to saying like, it appears that you're getting close to 120 days. It's not a perfect thing, and partly because we don't require businesses submit, like a calendar of how many they've done. And the data is not always perfect. So if somebody just blocks off, like if you have an RGA, but you're blocking off in the summer because your family's coming to visit, and so you actually block it off in Airbnb, Hamari will filter that to us initially as like, oh, it's been booked for this amount of time because somebody's booked it for their personal use. So it's not super straightforward, but then Hamari does for us track like the number of reviews you've got. So it's like, oh, look, every weekend there's a review. It'll show up, but then we can go to somebody and say, look, you've had. But if there's 136 short-term rentals, how many of those roughly anecdotally trip the 120 days?
like I said, I think there were a couple that like actually had reviews that exceeded it. But yeah,
Not many.
Two.
yeah, not many, but then, you know, I don't think we have accurate data to fully get it.
The new legislation and regulations, I gather that there's supposed to be increased information that the province collects.
Yeah.
And then presumably will share with the municipality, private municipality enters into a information or an agreement. Do we know whether that information is going to be more accurate in terms of being able to pinpoint the 120 days than what our consultant is currently coming up with?
I believe so. Like, we just did a webinar this morning with the province. They held one specifically on the Bill 35. And so, yeah, what the bill has in it in the guide is like there'll be data sharing that like hosting companies will have to share the information with the province, and the province is sensitive and enter into data sharing agreements with municipalities or local governments so that we get directly with actually like list the address, the owner. I don't know the extent of data. So what I've said essentially is like we will continue to use Homari until we are receiving data from the province and are satisfied that it's better, in which case maybe we can step away from using Homari.
But you anticipate that there will be, in fullness of time, more information forthcoming through the province than what we're currently getting through our consultant?
Definitely in terms
With
of,
respect to the 120 days,
Yeah.
but with respect to all aspects of the operation, short-term rental.
definitely in terms of like address owner, that stuff, because what Hamari does is they find the listing, they find pictures, and then they try to identify. They're not always 100% successful at identifying the property. And from the province, it will be like, you know, this is the address of this listing.
Is the reason for all of this is like there's a difference between the way it is right now, that people can use it commercially and that it's not linked and related to people living on islands. And so how to filter out that we have B&Bs and tourism that is linked to the community. Well, now we have those used for B&Bs. So that's the real essence of the whole thing, isn't it?
I said
The difference between
Yeah.
opting in and opting out is that we start excluding these 32, if I saw the number well, houses of being just rented out for tourism without people living in the house. That will be the opting in situation, that we say no to that. The opting out situation, we say that we still allow that. Is that just for my simple mind?
Yeah, I guess
That's the essence of the decision that we need to take.
I guess what I'd say is like, so Bill 35 has pieces in it that apply to us regardless. So things like the data sharing and, you know, provincial enforcement and like, there's a whole range of stuff about sort of regulation for it that applies to us regardless. And then, yes, the choice that like council is trying to consider is like to opt into this requirement that it be there'd be a principal resident on the property. And so, like I said, that applies automatically to larger municipalities or small municipalities within a larger metro area. But Bowen is not included, but may choose to opt in.
But for us, like you said, it's 32 or maybe 34 units and $9,000 in lost business license revenue. That's essentially.
Yeah, compared to creating, I think the real value set is what does that have as an impact to long-term rentals that become available for families or people wanting to live on island. I think that's the real trade-off we have to make.
The other bit, given we're an economic development committee, is how much do those 32 rentals bring in tourist dollars and sales tax or whatever else?
Yeah.
And that, I don't think that's here.
So that's not here, you know.
Sorry, I was holding up another question, but are we doing it back and forth, asking questions as we go? Okay, so going back a little bit further, how many do you have when you were showing the commercial, is one of the commercial accommodations? How many are there? And do you know how many?
I mean, I think when we do business licenses, is there one? I don't know. It's wrapped into like other. So like the Union Steamship Marina has zoning for commercial guest accommodation and runs commercial guest accommodation, but it doesn't show up in their business license because they just have a commercial license. So there's like a handful. Like I see that Sat's on the call, right? Obviously, it's like Nectar Yoga runs Retreat Center, which isn't quite the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like Artisan Inn.
Artisan suites.
Thank you, yes. And the Union Steamship are largely the places that run like commercial guest accommodation.
Yeah, so those two, just because we don't have, so part of the complication or the nuance of Bowen is that we don't have a hotel, we don't have a lodge, we don't have a campground. And if we look at those two commercial operations, they have a total of 22 beds. That's it. So I think, I'm hoping we'll have a nuanced conversation and look at this and take into consideration the Bowen context. Because even if we look to Gabriola, they've got inns and lodges that they rent out a lot more rooms than we do. And they also have camping as well. So it's, and to your point, even if we were to get rid of all of those standalone places that are renting, which they're the places that have room for families. Say there's a wedding or something like that, people come over. They can't squeeze into a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom suite in somebody's basement kind of thing, right?
I think what the value, conflict of values that I see is that we need to make a trade-off between affordability on island and people staying. Because and how many long-term rentals are there in houses also for people compared to we have a problem now, that's which is true, commercially on tourism to have accommodation for people. But solving that by taking away rentals, long-term rentals, while we have an affordability issue, that's the trade-off we have to make.
No, I
That's
understand
really
that
regenerative.
there's no
Yeah.
guarantee that when you take away those 32, or I'm not even sure it's 32, that those will actually turn into rentals, is the thing.
It's true, but allowing it is when you look from a regenerative point of view, these two are really interconnected. So I think we really have to make the trade-off between these two.
But it didn't look
And
like,
it's a start for something else.
didn't look like yet there's much of a strong data connection between affordability and canceling STRs or not.
What do you mean by that?
Like a single digit effect on rents.
Well, the only thing we know, if we, I would love to see the statistics because I've never looked into them and they are not related in this document. They can lead to other topics like the affordability issue, the amount of rentals, people needing to leave the island because there's no place. That's a big issue. So that's the two dossiers we need to combine with each other.
I know, and I think everybody agrees,
Yeah.
but will getting rid of those turn into affordable, we don't have the data for that, we don't know.
It's true, and so it's not because by saying,
Guys,
again,
I'm gonna ask, can we go through the share, please? Sorry, it's so exciting and it's great to have the
I
engagement.
just want to sharpen it so that we really have all of the opinions to the table. Like
Okay,
otherwise,
but we should let Daniel.
I'll just go through this before maybe full discussion in terms of where we are. So this came to council in January. We noticed it got referred to this committee that was an advisory committee. We are probably next week sending out notice. We'll send out a mail drop to get a little brochure in the mail. And we have 2 open houses scheduled in February. With the idea to come back to council in March for a decision if they want to opt in for this March 31st deadline. It's sort of like aimed to like, okay, if council wants to do that, we want to be able to prepare them something to consider for this deadline. With the sort of caveat that this is an annual thing, like the province says, if you opt in before March 31st of any given year, it'll come into effect in November of that year. So, council's direction could be, well, let's continue to think about it for a year, come back next November and we will have more information on how it's across the province and, yeah. Good. And then just finally, we have a survey available on our website, so the QR code and the link are there. It got launched last week. We've had about 150 responses to date, but encourage everyone to fill it out as well so we can get your individual feedback on it.
Is it possible to consider the data from the survey?
It's not closed. It'll close, I think we close it March, I forget when we said, early March.
You have a preliminary view on those 150?
No, I've just looked at responses. I've tried not to look at partial data.
So, do you have any further information for instance, we're also, the municipality is engaging in a review of the current policy, right?
Yeah.
Have you got anything specifically about that is going to be presented?
I don't know if my report talked on a whole lot. Part of the survey is asking people when we put in the the policy, a lot of the outreach was asking people like, what are you concerned about? A lot of concern about like noise, impact on neighborhoods, right? So noise, traffic, whatever else. We haven't received almost like very few complaints in terms of that. It seems like that part of it is working well, but part of that, like the survey is asking sort of like, is it impacted in your neighborhood type questions? Yeah, I think if anything, sort of the comments might be that like right now, because of the short-term rental policy, we end up treating RGAs quite differently than B&Bs. So if you have a residential guest accommodation, the business license requirements are like you have a contact, there's a lot more information about like notifying neighbors and stuff than is in place for B&Bs, and maybe it's more appropriate to try treating them a little more similarly.
Maybe on that note, I see that Seth has his hand up and thought maybe he would have a question.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Danny, I have a question. This is for the provincial policy. Is there a clause, or I thought I read somewhere that it's limited to one guest accommodation per, I guess, licensee, or however you want to call it, or per address? Can you clarify or confirm that that's the case and how that may impact Bowen? Like how many people have more than one guest accommodation, I guess, or B&B room? Like, does is that going to impact like you said? I mean, we have B&B right now, and some people have more than one room or accommodation that they're providing. Is there language around that?
Yeah, my understanding is that it relates to like the rental of a dwelling. So B&Bs aren't renting a complete dwelling, so our zoning permits, 4 or 5 B&B rooms with the owner, like the operator on site, and that would continue to be permitted.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I may add, my understanding is that provincial legislation doesn't apply to B&Bs either. Or unless you have clarity.
I think sometimes it's just fuzzy in terms of like the terms they get used. Like if you were listing a B&B on Airbnb, I think you would have to like register under the Bill 35 and you have to be posting your business license, and like those restrictions would apply to you as renting a short-term accommodation space.
Oh, that's interesting. So that the way that it's actually sold, that's what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah.
Because we have some B&Bs that have the B&B license, and they do advertise on short-term rental sites. So that'll be an interesting nut to crack. But I did want to add, just because I heard a little bit of back and forth in the dialogue about the question around affordability, and I just want to remind folks too that the challenge around housing that we're facing is not just affordability, it's also availability. And so like we're basically at a near zero vacancy rate in this region, and so that in and of itself is a traumatic challenge to overcome.
Do we have a sense of the housing stock deficit on Bowen? Like in terms of units or beds or some kind of measure?
Right, we have a housing needs assessment report, which I think was completed in 2020, beginning of 2020. And so, we rely on the data from that, which illustrated, a strong need for additional housing. Pardon me?
Do you have any sense of the quantum? Like if we have 32 houses right now, how does that compare to?
Report, but there is a requirement with the provincial legislative amendments that we have to update that report. Ours is pretty recent, so we may or may not have to have an updated report, but we do have, Dan will just clarify, we do have to update it, okay? So that'll give us better data, current data on those questions.
But the reason for the whole provincial move was exactly the availability. If you now look to the statistics, growth in the shortage of housing for families, whether it's affordable or not, that's not the real issue. There's no availability anymore. That counts for Whistler. That's why Squamish is doubling in size, and you can go on and on. And the effect of that is the costs are just raising in a crazy way for either for renting or for buying. And so this is also will you solve that by saying no, of opting in? There's a first puzzle piece, but there's the Bowen Watch. It's not used for tourism. It should have been used for tourism because it has all of the accommodation. So you're not solving the right things with the right measures. And this could be a way also of bringing that straight forward.
Is there any data on a link between short-term rentals being banned and that housing stock becoming available for long-term rental or permanent residency, or does someone just keep their house empty and just go for the 3 months in the summer? Do we know? Because there's a huge assumption that they're not gonna just
I think
not
there's,
rent it.
it depends on the unit, I think particularly in the urban areas, I mean, which I think this legislation is in, like Vancouver, people buying multiple condos to rent them out. And I think that's what this legislation is really aiming at. Like I said, Bowen's context is a little bit different. So there would be data that some of that does turn over, but I don't know. I mean, I know there are some, University, I think Carleton did a recent study, it's something like that that's been in the news.
Like I would guess that if you have a summer cottage and you've been renting it out to pay your property taxes, you can't rent it out anymore. It's more likely that you just don't rent it out than you put it up to rent for 12 months a year. I have no idea if there's data behind it.
So Daniel, in terms of these 32 or 34 dwelling units, could you categorize them generally? Do you have a knowledge of the built form of those dwelling units as to whether they fall into the category of classic Bowen Island family cottage or $3.6 million, 8-bedroom, 10-bathroom?
I mean, not
Or
really,
house.
not that I have a spreadsheet somewhere, but I could.
And just to bring the conversation back to, because it is complex and really interesting. And I think for Bowen Island, maybe a little bit more complex, a little bit more interesting because, those who live on Bowen, of course, we have permanent residents who are here all year round. Some residents are not here all year round. And then there are a lot of properties that already have a secondary dwelling or already have a secondary suite. And Jody, I think it's a really good point too, that we don't have a hotel, we don't have a lodge, that would be typical accommodation. But we do have a shortage of housing as well. And, for the committee, in terms of council asking us to consider opting in or opting out and what would be, our recommendation, this is something that we could, of course, make the recommendation today or for the next meeting. But the point being that we're to look at this through the lens, of course, of economic development. And economic development from a tourism point of view, certainly there's also economic development for those who would be wanting or needing to work on Bowen Island and needing that housing temporarily, maybe or permanently on Bowen Island. So there's different aspects of it from an economic development point of view. So just a reminder to that when we do look at this and make a referral, it is through the lens of local economics.
Roger wants to say something.
Oh, yes, sorry. Roger, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'd also like to add in one other factor. I have worked with the government putting these type of registry systems in place. And I can say that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So it will change over time dependent on influences that are much bigger than Bowen Island. And they will be driven to solve those problems. Then the differences that happen here where you have a lot of cottages, so there's a lot of differences. So we should take that into account as well.
Thanks, Roger. Any other questions, Jody?
Can I ask a couple questions? So during the peak summer season, if we're talking about employees and needing housing, and some people are hopeful that if we change this, that we'll get more accommodation for workers. But almost 2 years ago, and I can't remember the exact name of it, I remember the previous council looked into what Topino was doing, which was sort of the temporary kind of trailer park on things. And then that's not the right thing, but affordable kind of accommodation where in particular seasonal workers could come and work during the peak season.
stay in a cottage or stay in a trailer or something like that. Where, has that been revisited? Is that gonna be revisited or anything? Because that's a really easy kind of quick win that if there's a property owner that's open to doing that, that could potentially bring in however much space they've got. Is that being talked about or considered?
That's not on my like current work plan. I feel like it was referred to a council priority session.
But I believe it was UQLIT.
Yeah.
And we did do research into that, and they're no longer doing that because they found it to be not very successful. And in order to do it in a way that was respectful of the neighbors and meaningful to the needs of providing additional accommodation, it was quite challenging. So I think they did it for maybe 2 seasons, and then they've walked away.
Didn't work out the way that they'd hoped.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make a comment too, that in general, I find by deregulating housing, building new housing for private owners generally is a quick win in terms of just increasing supply, making it easier for people to build those secondary suites or those secondary dwellings. It does, for a lot of properties on Bowen Island where there is large property lots, it does lend itself sort of a quick way to address a housing issue in general. And I know that this is an issue that would kind of spill into the housing issue, because it's the province's solution partly to housing. But we're trying to, I think for Bowen Island, we're looking at this through a number of different lenses too, that there is housing, but it's also to support our local economy and all of the activities that are taking place, which may not necessarily be a consideration, let's say, with the city of Vancouver.
Chair, one final question for staff. Daniel, in the 2019 policy, there seemed to have been a trade-off between the 120-day limit and the principal resident requirement. And I gather Hornby and Bowen have both opted for limitation in terms of the number of days of use. In the case of Bowen, it's 120 days, but it appears from the policy, or at least the background in the policy, that that was somehow a trade-off in terms of not at that time adopting a requirement that it had to be within the principal residence. Am I reading that correctly, or?
Yes, and I think a lot of the driver of that short-term rental policy was essentially council through the outreach we did, hearing from people who said, I own a secondary dwelling on Bowen that I am in part of the year, empty part of the year. And I'm not going to have a long-term tenant in it because it's empty, but I would like to make it available part of the time. And so that was sort of the impetus for the 120 days, but like this is a way to sort of unlock the, vacation places that are available some of the time. Yeah.
Right, and even with the implementation of the provincial legislation, we're still going to have the 120-day limitation.
Yes.
Or that's being considered, I don't know, but.
Right, so yes, in theory, the council could opt in, they could remove the 100, and somebody could have it available as short-term rental, I guess, 6 months minus a day, I guess, without the 120 restriction.
I'm not saying that, but I'm still wanting to see what is potentially being considered for revision to if this doesn't go through, in what way was the policy changed?
Yeah, and I think, Jody, probably the answer is like, we've got the survey out in this initial round with this March deadline. And if we come to council says, okay, we're not going to opt in, but based on the feedback, we would like to look at options. It's like then we would work on developing and maybe do more outreach in terms of, okay, this is what we've heard, this is what we're proposing.
So in the short term, you're going to just do this and then see where we land with that and then potentially change.
And I guess either way, like if council says, yes, we want to opt in, then probably at a minimum, we guys will be revising our bylaws to match and to come into effect November 1st. So that then, because right now as it stands, like, if you're a larger community, the provincial regulations come into effect, I think, May 1st, I think. And the province will enforce those requirements. If you're a community where it is in effect, you actually can't enforce it this directly because it's the provincial thing. So the province is encouraging places then to like amend your bylaws to match because then you can enforce, you know, the provincial requirement if you want. So I'd imagine if we opt in, we'd be looking to amend our bylaws as well to match so we could find, we can enforce the same regulations across the board. Yeah.
We are now Jan 31st, when I was here. There's not enough, I don't have enough clarity yet for myself. What are the advantages of opting in? Or what are the true advantages of opting out for the community and then also economically? So what are the questions we still need to raise ourselves in order to really like come to a right conclusion in the upcoming month or whenever we're gonna meet again?
So is
Because
that-
to your point, I really do what you said, but there's no alternative maybe also for families involved. It holds ground. But we are now intertwining different topics and how can we,
Yeah.
it's not one directed.
No, it's really nuanced.
Yeah,
And that's where, I mean, I don't know what council's gonna decide, but we do have fairly good already bylaws in Bowen Island. So for instance, I think in Vancouver, if somebody does short-term rental, they're allowed to do it for 6 months. And here we're allowed to do it for 4 months, right? So, I mean, and we are being monitored. Anyway, so that's why I keep going back to, I wonder if it's working reasonably well, it seems to me, if we consider, you said that Emma, before in 2019, there was 160 units and we're sitting at about almost 200, is that right? So I mean, it's not huge, I don't know, but I'm just saying. So Bowen has a particular context and we need to look at, it's very nuanced, it's very complex. I totally support regulation, I've always said that. I personally, when the previous regulation came in, I would have liked to see it a bit nuanced. I was recommending like Nelson, they have different kinds of licenses that they were doing, recognizing that some are gonna operate in a more commercial way, like, so for instance, if somebody wanted to rent a place for families to stay, that kind of thing. So it's really complex. And we all agree we want affordable and more housing and stuff.
and healthy tourism too. So it's really how can it go hand in hand? If you
Well,
can
it all
find a-
balance, and I don't, well, balancing is complex.
Or maybe like you said earlier about the paying your property taxes. You rent your place out to help pay your property taxes and that's it, basically. You don't want to take that away from a homeowner either.
Yeah.
Because they rely on that, taxes have gone up so much. that
Yeah.
It may mean that they would have to sell their home.
Do we have it sounds like we have a collective view. I think we could probably,
So I don't feel comfortable at this stage.
to opt in or opt out.
Yeah.
You don't have a view?
Yeah, I was just gonna put it out there, like, do we feel at this stage that we have enough information that, you know, do we wanna take a vote, for example, in terms of our recommendation at least to opt in or opt out? Did we wanna at least have a vote and see where we sit and then from there unpack maybe some of those comments?
I would propose a vote.
I'm not sure if we're going to have any further information by our next meeting on the 28th of February in any event, because the survey results won't be in your report in terms of the results of the public engagement won't be in. So we won't have theoretically any more information on the 28th than what we have today.
Well, then
I
if,
think, but also like the way we have a conversation, opting in or opting out, none of them is like holding ground and honoring the conversation here, because there's no either or. That's what I hear. So that's where I feel it's what if you would opt in or opt out when the conditions off. That's also what was asked in our agenda. What are the conditions for opting?
Just do a little straw poll here then.
well, I was gonna say, so why don't we maybe just start it off then, that, you know, the question that the Community Economic Development Committee recommend that council opt in to the provincial legislation Bill 35 regarding short-term rentals and provide the following comments. But let's do a vote, like if we agree that that council should opt in, just with a show of hands.
So this is voting on voting or this is the vote?
So,
This is the vote.
Okay, sorry, let me just get back to the.
And sorry, just to clarify, we're being asked to give either today or by the next meeting or something? Is that, or like?
well, I think what I'm hearing is that there are some who feel that we may not have, we'll have no more information next meeting than we do today. So I just thought, should we just take a vote for now and see where we sit and
We
just
can always
have
vote
some
again
sort of.
next year because it's a recurring yearly thing, right?
I think I want to see the survey results.
So that's what I'm kind of thinking.
But we won't see
I-
the
I-
results by our next meeting on the 28th. Council has to meet and decide on it in March in order to make the March 31st date, because they want to opt in. They have to make a request to the Minister of Housing by the 31st of March as to whether they want to be in.
There's a pretty good chance that council doesn't get a recommendation at all if we don't do it now.
Can we, is that an option, which you just said also, Jamie, that we can have the survey results and then have a choice with each other?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think we've put that it closes in like early March. So I mean, there's time before then, like I'd come back to council the second March meeting, which will be the fourth Monday in March, I'm not sure, it's the 20-something. So, but I understand, you know, your meeting's the end of February, you don't meet again and you don't have a mid-March.
Well, we could do it a quick online or even an email vote. I don't know, that's official.
And this is an annual thing, so even if we didn't do it right now, like you said, another option is that next November revisit this.
Yes, with the caveat, if you opt in, the province has requirements to opt out, because if you want to opt out, you need to show like a vacancy rate above a certain threshold, and I forget what else is in there. And then partly because they've written that, places are automatically in. They're saying you want to not be in, you need to meet certain thresholds to opt out. So council could opt in. The council could say, okay, not this year, let's monitor. We'll reconsider next March. But if they say, let's opt in, if then next March they want to opt out, it's like, well, we have to meet certain.
You would also be doing your updated housing study between now and then as well, so that council and committee would be better informed in terms of housing availability on Bowen before making the decision on the principal resident question.
Essentially, it sounds easier to kick the can down the road a year when we have better data.
Yeah.
That's what sounds like to me too.
Better data would be that from the information shared by the province, the updated housing availability or assessment study, and any other operational information that's gleaned from the legislation and the regulations that staff might choose to report on prior to the next opt-in date, which presumably would be spring of 2025.
And any other small communities that choose to opt in, and then we have a year of their experience to.
Yes, it sounds like such a political, dreadful decision to just postpone taking responsibility.
I thought that's politics.
But that's not my way.
So two questions coming from, I'm not sure who's in this first, but maybe Roger, we'll start with you.
Yep, just want to put in again that the initial launch of this system will be a bit of a show. It won't work properly, there'll be issues with it, and there'll be ramifications that are unseen and unthought of in that first year. And there will be a reaction to that and changes that have to go forward, and again, will be dictated by much larger communities than us. So being along for the ride might be too big of a roller coaster for us.
Thanks, Roger. And Sat?
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Really good conversation. I just wanted to add a piece, obviously recognizing that this is going to impact tourism in some form or another. If it does, if the community or the council chooses to opt in, as a business owner, it would also be good at, I think we're trying to put together maybe a little bit of a list of information that we would want in order to truly make a decision as a committee. But one of the other pieces would be to understand currently what businesses, what economic impact is the lack of housing having on businesses on Bowen, right? I know, again, speaking personally as a business owner on the island, our economic development as a business on the island is limited based on the availability, lack of housing. So, obviously tourism suffers if we constrict short-term rental, but then potentially there's a benefit to the community from an economic perspective. But it'd be good to understand, and that can again be done by a survey. I know there's been in the past, I believe that has happened, but it'd be probably good to do that again, to survey businesses to see, which of them are constricted by that right now.
Thanks so much, Seth. That's a really good point. So keeping in mind that we're just a few minutes, we only have a few minutes left for this agenda item. What I'm hearing correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're looking more closely at recommending that council opt out. And in the meantime, we'll have a year to gather more data to better understand what the landscape looks like, to see what other communities are doing, small communities similar to Bowen, how are they managing things? And by opting out, it just gives us a little bit of time then to better understand the issue. And we could always opt in a year from now when it's being revisited. Would that be a fair summary?
I think it's wise because the landscape is changing. There's a new apartment building that's now full. So I think that maybe the demand on affordable housing is maybe not so acute right now. And maybe if you show that that's a benefit, maybe a developer will come in and build another apartment building that therefore again would help with affordable housing. I don't know. The landscape is changing.
It is.
And there's lots of variables. Yeah.
Give me the can.
Well, then if I could just maybe put on the floor that in terms of a recommendation to council, that the committee recommends that council opt out to the provincial.
I don't think we opt out. I think we don't opt in.
Oh, we just don't opt in. Is that what it is? Okay. It just said opt in or, not opt in. I see, yes, okay.
And then
Can we say at this time?
I was gonna say that when I went to the Housing Advisory Committee, not to like, give you hints, but they said at this time was their motion, not opt-in at this time, with the same idea that.
Okay. Well, then I think we all agree with that revision. And I, further to that in terms of comments, what I was hearing today, as we were saying before, is just more information and seeing what other communities do and to revisit that those could be comments that we then forward to council as well for consideration.
We turn that into a recommendation and recommend that council direct staff to monitor the impact and the effectiveness of the legislation and to report back to council prior to the next opportunity to opt in. So basically in a year's time. And follow up on Zad's comment, and as you just pointed out too, Madam Chair, and perhaps also to report back on the impact of the lack of housing on businesses and tourism on Bowen.
Yeah, and building on that, Brian, maybe, for staff to actually do a survey, to Sat's point, doing a survey just to have a better understanding of what is the economic impact with the lack of housing. Yeah.
That is specific. How do we feel about, did I capture that, Brian, and do people agree? Those last two, that council directs staff to monitor the impact of the legislation in other communities.
Does it need to be said somewhere with an eye on tourism? I don't know how to fit that in there, but he's got a new community center opening up soon with opportunities for conferences, weddings, et cetera, and where will they stay? So it needs to be said, I think.
I see a tent business opening up on, you just get your tent, go up to Mount Gardner. No.
A cruise ship in Deep Bay.
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, you're risque here, yeah, living on the edge.
We had a weekend workshop, art workshop this weekend, and one of the participants was in a Airbnb and they had to cancel, so then they couldn't participate in the art workshop because there was nothing else to rent. So there's just one little example of somebody wanting to come to the island and not having secure housing.
Well, and I get requests throughout the year that people looking for places. But somebody coming to a wedding and wanting to stay like in a lodge or something with, kind of like 3 or 4 extended families, and there's no place for them to go. And I give, okay, well, you can divide up and go.
Yeah.
So.
Have we asked the 32 people directly?
Sorry, I'm just gonna.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to focus
Yes.
on finishing this off if we can, make sure that everybody's happy with how this is drafted?
Do we
I'm
need
not too
to?
sure what the
I-
impact.
Okay, I'm just trying to capture that tourism comment. If anyone has any suggestion there?
Any suggestions on the draft?
On the second paragraph, the council directs staff to monitor the impact of the legislation in other communities and report back to council. I would say prior to the next opt-in opportunity in 2025.
I would also add one last thing also regarding to what you said, Liam. What is the relationship between this and the availability of housing on the island? Because we are not mentioning it right now, but there's a big relationship that we don't have the data from yet. I think that's to be researched in the upcoming year too.
A big part of the housing study that staff needs to do, or?
I don't know that the housing assessment will look at correlation between STRs and availability and things like that.
Sample size is too small to matter anyway.
It's going to be more looking at like, okay, what is the available stock, the different types, and what are the known needs for housing looking forward. But I don't think it'll get into deep analysis of why we're in the environment we're in. That's for this table.
Okay.
A question I don't know, do we know how many houses are still vacation houses, like they're non-primary? Do we know?
I mean, we have the census number from 2021. And so it's like, I don't remember the number, but 85% of dwellings on Bowen are occupied by the usual resident and 50% are not. And in 2016, it was 75% of homes were occupied by usual resident. So
Yeah, COVID, a lot of people moved here.
yeah, so a lot of people moved in COVID. So, you know, between 2016 and 2021, Bowen grew at a higher percentage rate than any other municipality in the Lower Mainland. But half of our growth came from conversion of essentially dwellings that were not occupied by usual resident to occupied by usual residents. So either that's people residing full-time on Bowen who previously split time, or it's that those houses are now being purchased by people who are full-time.
Okay. All right, so just because we're at time here, I feel as if I'm looking closely at the agenda and exactly, and your time too, Daniel. Thank you so much for all of the information and the presentation that you provided us. This is great. It's been a great platform for us to have a good conversation. So Steph's now drafted our
Very massive reporting. That's a lot of research.
yeah, that's a lot of, well,
I'm just gonna say it because I'm not part of the committee, but yeah, I mean, we have ambitious goals in this
Staff to work
community,
on Sundays
and,
and.
yeah, so I have no qualms with any of those desires, but I just know that we are constantly challenged with managing the demands on staff time, so.
Yeah.
But so, sorry to interrupt, but can the Economic Development Committee do a survey with businesses?
Yeah.
Okay, well then,
That's a good.
Yep, the previous Economic Development Committee from 2 years ago did it.
Yeah, we have a survey that exists and is still actionable, sort of have.
Yeah, so maybe we just tweak it and make sure it covers if there's any new areas we want to learn about.
There's a subcommittee.
okay, another subcommittee. Okay, this is good.
So how do we want to get rid of all this then?
I just get worried because Daniel is responsible
so-
for doing an OCP and all of these.
So basically, everything we just added becomes a subcommittee responsibility for us, and we're just saying, don't opt in. That's the
Well-
simplistic version.
Direct the CDC to.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yes, or, to support. I don't know if we can do it all, but we could certainly work with staff. At those points, to directly to work with staff or.
Could I be so bold as to
Yes.
say that the committee has its own ability to initiate work as well, that it, To some degree.
We're
like-
doing a work plan today, so do you wanna just take this whole section and put it in the work plan?
Yeah, we could do that too, yeah.
I guess maybe they're looking for more of just a fulsome something to.
Well, maybe we should then, I'm just gonna throw this out, just leave it, that council directs staff to monitor the impact of legislation in other communities and report back to council prior to the next opt-in opportunity in 2025. Just leave it. And then all of the other information, we can have that spill over to a subcommittee when we start talking about that later on. All right.
Okay.
On that note, should we do a vote? Staff?
Get a mover.
Should we? I think somebody needs to move it. Who's gonna move it? Cooper, thank you. So for all of those who
You
agree,
were in a seconder and then you get the last chance to chat.
yeah,
Did we lose the folks online or no, they're still there?
no, they're still there. I don't see them
Oh,
all.
sorry, I've taken them
Yeah,
off.
okay.
Sharing.
And just showing a show of hands, thank you. Thanks, Sat. Thanks, Roger. Great. Good. All right. So I say it's a all in favor? Okay, thank you. Yay! Yeah.
Before you leave, if this is still okay, can we get the 32 unit and like literally ask them the question, what do you intend to do with this? If
The survey asks, has a separate, you say you operate as a municipal. It gives you a separate section. The survey does ask those people who are not able to.
So we're gonna get that information.
Yeah, given that, you know, it's obviously self-reported, it's like sample sizes, but yes, that's hopefully what we get out of this one. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much. So moving on to updates in our agenda. Wendy Coe with the province is not available to meet with us today, so we'll just have to work some time in for her during our next meeting. 6.2 Rural Islands Economic Partnership. Martin, maybe we could put you on the spot to give us a bit of an update.
Yeah, sure. So since our last meeting, I would maybe update you with 2 points. One is that REAP is looking at an application for a labor market participation project. So that's currently the key thing on our agenda. It's going to be an application for a project to look at basically needs and capacities across the region. So I'm sure there's going to be opportunities for some correlation with us here. And the other update was we are going through a strategic planning session in February for the next, plan out the agenda for the next few years. So it's a good opportunity if the committee has any comments or feedback or desires to, I can pass that along.
What's the timing of that, Martin?
For the planning session,
Yeah,
February 28th
okay.
at night.
So providing comments then by February 28th.
And comments on what's Martin?
Yeah, exactly.
Anything that the committee believes RIP should focus on, or how RIP should approach the regional strategy and networking. Like we had a good comment from Jody last time, so things like that, which I will pass on about the expansion of the scope.
There's a REAP subcommittee, so that
Yeah.
could take place there.
Yeah, so that's, okay, that sounds
Or
good.
suggested, I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
That's it.
okay, thanks, Martin. Moving on to tourism, Bowen Island. Jody, is there? There's always a lot going on in your world.
What do I want to say? Yeah, I mean, tourism is 365 days a year. Getting the final stages of the plan, hopefully release. I have traffic stats that I will be uploading to the website. I know there's lots of talk
So I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I will share that, you know, because we get the experience card breakout, which is not necessarily a perfect breakdown of who's a visitor and that, because we don't know, for instance, exactly who's using the experience card. Friends and family, which in the Vancouver Coast Mountain region is about, in 2017, 37% of visitors were traveling for the reason of visiting friends and family. That with the population of Bowen Island increasing, every time the population of Bowen increases, well, there's more friends and family visiting.
Hey, Martin, how are you doing?
Just preparing for the presentation.
Okay. Sorry, anyway, so I'll share that. I'll put that up and can share that. What else I want to say? I'm busy trying to get grants because we are very much, we're a nonprofit. We are only grant-based essentially, grant or we get a service fee, that kind of thing. So, sorry, off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
Is there any update around Love It to Death campaign?
Yes, thank you. I don't know if you heard, but I know Carla had a meeting with, so the Don't Love It to Death campaign, I don't know if people know about that. It's a sort of CEDC initiative, and Tourism Bowen Island's been working on that for 2 years. We will be getting some signage. They got a funding for some, we'll see some signage coming, like around Grafton Lakes and at some of the beaches, using the Don't Love It to Death sort of key signature themes. There's 8 of them, I believe. And then hopefully some Bowen specific images to go with it. So that's exciting to see that rolling out here. And does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. And we're just launching our map, which I don't know if people saw our last map, which has the Don't Love It to Death campaign and a lot of fire safety and stuff like that. So we'll be doing that again. It'll come out in probably May or something like that. So that will have, it's supposed to, like Tourism Bowen Island is community economic development, but also visitor management. So it will be a good resource to connect visitors with businesses, but it's also about trying to facilitate responsible visits and making sure people have the information that they need.
Great. Thanks, Judy. And then moving on to the Hearth Arts on Bowen.
What's that?
What's that? The most important.
So yeah, we have a really busy year coming up, and with limited staff resources because of, we've lost a recovery grant for COVID through the province of BC, which means that we are down on 1 staff person. So we have 1 full-time staff and 1 very part-time staff doing all the things that we do. Jody, you know what that's all about.
We have no stuff.
So yeah, you have no staff. Oh, easy. So up, coming up this year, next month we will, it's almost next month, February, we'll be presenting our annual report to council on our core funding agreement through BIM. We're working really hard on our current fundraiser right now. It's the Mini Artworks event. That event generally brings in about $18,000 for us, which is a huge amount of cash basically to keep us going. We have the Authentically Indigenous Festival coming up in June. It's almost a month-long festival with a number of events happening, and some authentic Indigenous art in the gallery. The partnership with BIM on the community center, we are planning for the upcoming performance season. We will be looking for part-time staff to take on that programming position through the Hearth. Yeah, and just a busy year of gallery shows and events and programming, using the stage more this year with all kinds of events. Yeah, busy, so busy. It's great, it's awesome, I love it. It's going to be a very exciting year with a lot of change with the community center opening, and just building up on the great things that we do already.
Okay. That sounds great, Jamie. And I take it with, with the community center, working on the cultural plan, expanding that, that'll sort of happen following the community center completion, is that the?
The cultural master plan?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why that's still there because we're always working on that.
Okay.
The cultural master plan, a lot of things, a lot of initiatives are often come from that.
Okay. So it's often, so it's not a standalone, it's being incorporated in all of your initiatives.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's definitely not a line item.
okay.
Yeah. Goes in everything that we're doing.
Well, thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Oh, by the way, Kirsten has a piece of art in the mini show. So.
Ta-da.
Yes, and it's an exceptional piece and you'll all have to come and bid on it.
Oh, Jamie, you're so nice. You're so kind.
I expect.
Yeah. Well, it's always a lot of fun to do, and I always leave it to the last minute too. It's like, oh my gosh, I got a day. So, if it looks good, that's great, Hopefully it's all for a good cause as well.
Under pressure.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda, update from council. Councillor Jurgensen, maybe we could.
Ask you to provide us an update.
No, that's okay. We,
Maybe.
Nothing economic development related taking place at council.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess.
Yeah. And maybe Liam, you could provide us an update from staff?
Sure.
In general?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of what is happening currently that's mostly related to the committee's work. And, I think there was a healthy discussion at the beginning of this meeting around housing, the short-term rental piece, which is critical. But another element, I'm not sure if this committee has discussed yet, but will in the future is the update to the OCP. And so that we're still working on the rollout of that. And so the next primary step is to establish a committee that'll effectively guide the development of that work. And council has already expressed a desire to have some foundational principles that support the entire development of the OCP, and that's to ensure that reconciliation is at the forefront of the consideration of how we advance as a community, and that we take into consideration the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and that we also consider what circular economy may or may not look like here on Bowen. Some people use the term donut economics. I prefer circular economy, but basically the same sort of thing. So that's going to be a really exciting piece of work that's going to keep Daniel and his team very busy. We are going to hire a consulting firm to help with the heavy lifting of the engagement side of it in particular, as well as some of the writing of it. And it's yet to be seen as to the full scope of work in terms of whether it'll be more of a review and revision or an actual a more comprehensive update. And so the terms of reference have been brought to council. The committee will be established soon, and you'll start to see that kind of rolling out this year in earnest. And it'll certainly come to this committee as well. So
I think this is really exciting, and I do think of some of the initiatives the committee has raised in the past in terms of industrial lands, and more for commercial lands to support a number of businesses that would be supporting the local economy. So I can see how this would be very exciting for the committee.
another piece of work that's happening that is relevant to this committee and that's right in alignment with what you're saying just now is council has supported the development of an implementation plan for development of Lot 1. We used to have a map of it up on the walls here, but so effectively the municipality owns various parcels of land in and around the cove. And there are 3 chunks of land called Lot 1, 2, and 3. Creative names. Lot 1 is the land that's furthest from the cove, and it's if you go down Mount Gardner Road, starts right across from the school, and there's a thin strip of land there, and it carries on past the gas station and around the corner on the other side of oh, look there, look at you go. How did you do that so fast?
Yeah.
So Birch, Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Society, and Tomo Development have been tasked with putting together a development plan for those lands. And so they're busy working away on that, and they have periodic stage gates where they'll report back to council on that work. It doesn't commit council to anything, rather it looks at here are some development opportunities. The interesting piece that Kristen was just speaking about is that Lot 1 in and of itself is broken up into sub parcels, and the first piece of it which says Lot 1 in that map is actually one of the very few pieces of land that is zoned for light industrial. There's only a handful, like I think literally 3 or 4 properties on the island that have that zoning. And so that's a critical piece of information to keep in mind when going forward, because in order to support any community, you do need that type of land available. So interesting piece of work. It'll be, I don't have a clear timeline as to when it will be finalized, but it is something to watch.
What's the zoning of
Lot 2 has got multiple zoning allocations on it, but so the first section where the hand is right now, that's zoned to allow for institutional and residential, and that's where the community center is, and as well, the remainder of the lot is zoned for higher density housing. And then Lot 3 is on the northern end of it is where the fire hall is. And then right where it says Lot 3 is where the new medical health center is. And then the remainder is just a remainder vacant lot.
Okay. Question for you. I'm curious as to why Lot 1, I see the division there. I'm curious why that first part that's across from the school would be. Do you know the rationale why that was designated as light industrial? Because it would make more sense to me if it was further down, like where the gas station is and the other area.
It's mostly, I wasn't part of that decision process.
Yeah.
It was in 2 councils ago.
Yeah.
But my understanding, my belief, this is just my belief,
Yeah.
is that it has to do with topography. So if you look at the land as it is on the ground, the weird polygon in the middle is incredibly steep and very difficult to do anything with. It would be very, very.
But that's the gas station there, is that correct or not? Am I wrong?
That area
Yeah.
that's the service yard
Yeah,
and
the
the
service yard
gas
and the
station.
gas station, yeah.
And so up above it, it's incredibly steep
Yeah.
and difficult, and you couldn't really do anything
Sure.
with it. And the same with the lands adjacent there. That's probably the most usable of that second lot.
Yep.
The lands up there on that sliver on the north, again, incredibly steep, really difficult to develop on. The area in Lot 1, where it says Lot 1, is probably the most developable. And so it can be mixed use, so light industrial, commercial, residential. So you could have light industrial with like residential on top and that kind of a thing.
So that would, yeah, because to me, that is walkable to the ferry, that for housing, you know, that seems, and across from school, and just seems to me that that's one of the prime places for housing.
But also, if I hear you properly, your hotel Be perfectly placed.
Well, I don't know if I said I want a hotel, I said you don't have
Your hotel. I mean it in a good way, because this is both commercial, it's close to the cove, and it's an area where you don't wanna live because it's too steep. So there's many factors, so you can factor in many things.
The lot one zoning allows for pretty much anything, and so housing is an allowable land use there. But ultimately, if you zoomed out and had to look at all of Bowen, there's no light industrial.
Yeah.
Like, there's nowhere
Like-
for any of that to go. And the reality is that you must have that to support a community.
Yeah.
And so, and I hear you loud and clear, but if you don't want it there, then where?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying, I mean, I'll go look.
Yeah, no, do it.
But further
I've
down.
walked all the properties.
Yeah.
And so, we've walked it with developers and we've walked it
Okay.
with
Oh,
all
yeah,
sorts of
yeah,
folks. And so it's very difficult
I
terrain.
will
Everything on
defer.
Bowen's tough to work with.
I will defer.
Yeah, but please do go have a look. Yeah.
But again, I think it's just a reminder with the OCP, like if there's an engagement process and comments coming back, I think there's lots in our strategic report that would be relevant to the OCP conversation, and industrial lands and commercial land certainly has been there before, so has been an issue before. Okay, thank you, Liam. Great.
One more question, and so lot 3, is Birch still trying to
Yes.
put, so that's still there on the back burner, okay.
Okay, great. If we can move along then, the 2024 CEDC work plan. You know, at our last meeting, we did talk a little bit that we have the strategy document. It's quite broad. It's a very rich document. There is a lot there. And, you know, our approach with that document is really to sort of pick out some things in that strategy report that we can, you know, dig our teeth into a little bit, maybe create a subcommittee and really hopefully put some actions around some recommendations that residents have put forward and what were in the strategy doc. So, you know, based on what we heard at the last meeting and that strategy doc, we sort of brainstormed a couple of subcommittees that could be set up. And what we see this being is a subcommittee would really be owned by a member of this committee. Who makes part of your subcommittee could of course be other members of our committee. It could maybe invite other members of other committees or other subject matter experts living on Bowen Island. But what we'd really like to see, I think, for this year is a couple of subcommittees be set up and be developed, that there's a lot of opportunities that are there. And so rather than the committee as a whole kind of tackle it, sort of break it into subcommittee groups. For example, sort of one was policy development. It just seems as if there's a couple of items that pop up that we could be of support by developing policy, particularly around the use of public lands for commercial purposes. Or for example, policy in terms of our committee, you know, what is our guiding principles in terms of supporting local businesses and what does that policy look like? Steph, is there anything else too that you can think of that a policy committee would be looking at? Well, now we've got the short-term rental housing, which could maybe fall under policy, or it could be a standing committee on its own. Again, I think an idea that Martin and I have visited in the past is a Bowen Island app you know, one thing I certainly found when I moved to Bowen Island is there's lots of great information on the tourism side, and I certainly knew where to find that on the tourism side. But there's other parts of information on Bowen Island that I found the information to be quite fragmented. And is it an opportunity to explore a Bowen Island app that would bring together lots of different information, but all with touch points with economic development? That's another idea. The newcomer guide, of course, Rural Island Economic Forum, remote workspace feasibility, which was something that we looked at last year, and is that something we wanted to continue doing? And then, of course, an annual business summit. So sort of on, you know, to that point, I just thought maybe initially just to throw out, you know, is there somebody who is there a subcommittee? Is there an idea in our strategy document that you see as being something worthy of setting up a subcommittee? Is that something that you would like to do? Or any of the subcommittees here that have been listed, is there one that really jumps out for you that you would like to take leadership on? Just thought I would throw that out to the team at this time.
Would the OCP come under policy development as well?
That's a good question. It could, because, you know, if we see the subcommittee sort of rolling, you know, always kind of looking at policies and being a support, yeah, then maybe that would make sense. Hi, Martin, yeah.
Maybe something's particular because Leon mentioned it in relation to OCP about circular economy and like I would volunteer for that one.
For a circular economy subcommittee?
Circular economy and reconciliation, which actually I'm gonna mention in my presentation coming up. I'm gonna talk about some relationships there as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, on that note, I'm wondering if the Rural Island Economic Forum with the circular economy, like, because that's a priority too with the Rural Economic Forum too, isn't it? Is the circular economy, so maybe that is,
Let's go under that section. I've got it in front of me.
yeah. So maybe we should call that subcommittee circular economy and make the Rural Island Forum a subsection. And then
So it includes Owen and just interface with, right?
okay. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that Martin, you'd like to head up a subcommittee called Circular Economy, Reconciliation. And then under that subcommittee, that's where any initiatives coming from the Rural Economic Development Forum would.
Yeah. Definitely want to add it up. I'm just looking at the word reconciliation and I'm thinking if it's the proper use there. Well, I'm gonna talk about the relevance. This whole committee probably will have to evolve the name. I'm not sure what it's gonna be. That's what I wanna say.
The MRDT stuff under policy.
That's what it was. I'm like, what was the other then? That is good.
I'm not, no, but I will do policy development with someone else.
A little bit related to that, Martin, and to what you said, Leon, there's the OCP coming up. And I think it's gonna be an intense work. And then I think lots gonna land here too, might land here. So how can we prepare as a committee to be ready to support the OCP process? It might be that we either have a subcommittee on that also to be ready and agile, and it might be linked to circular economy or not. I think that's a task that will be at hand and a priority for this year. So maybe it's better to have a subcommittee or proceed that we do it as a whole committee, but that might delay us.
Process-wise, I'm thinking that OCP committee would have sections that they would send out to the other committees over the years.
Well, hopefully it's not too many years, but it could take 2 years.
Like I'm thinking sort of referral.
There will be
engagement.
specific referrals to committees and, I mean, it's up to the committee how they want to then handle that. But I think it'll be very similar to, you know, the referral that you received regarding short-term rentals. More complex, more in-depth. And so.
So maybe we're not quite sure what the role of this group with the OCP would be as far as subcommittee work. I don't think right now.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know that.
sorry, I in terms of setting up subcommittees too, I don't think we necessarily need to figure out exactly all of the details in terms of what the subcommittee would be looking at, so much as knowing that there's enough there to create a subcommittee, which when I look at this, I think there is enough there.
It's under policy.
Yeah, under policy development for that subcommittee, I think there's enough there that it makes sense to set up a subcommittee. I would suggest.
Right.
Okay.
Great. We'll take.
I don't know the guy. Very smart.
And so this is great, you know, that we've got members of our committee wanting to then do this work. I would like to invite a member though to be a leader of the policy development subcommittee. Is there one person in particular who would like to be our point person. And I see Cooper's pointing to Brian.
All in favor?
I will work closely with you.
Yeah.
How's that? That's fine.
Let's rely on your years of experience in this area versus my 0 years.
Okay. Okay, well, I mean, that's great. Thank you, Brian and Leland for jumping in and being on the Policy Development Committee. I think there's a lot there.
Oh, and that, we got you.
Yeah, so I was, and I know, Martin, you're gonna be providing us a presentation, but my elevator pitch with the Bowen Island app is there is a member of our community who's already started a Bowen Island app, so it's already available, but it's very limited. It's really has, and I think it just started as, you know, the best resource for ferry times and the best resource, I think, for short-term rentals maybe. But I just think, you know, there's lots of great information on the Bowen Island Municipal website. There's a lot of great information with tourism. It's just sort of having one place where maybe it's a QR code on the ferry that tourists can scan and they have that information, but also if residents also have the app, that could have updates. I think there's also another website that talks about events and gives information for events. So I think what I'm suggesting is that a subcommittee be set up just to look at, should we actually have a Bowen Island app? And if we should, what really should be in it? How would that information flow? It's not to replace anything that's there already, so much as it's just another tool in the toolbox in terms of everybody accessing information in terms of all that is Bowen. But, you know, part of that feasibility investigation will also have to look at the business model. Like, obviously, this could not be something subsidized, I don't think, by the municipality or by nonprofits on the island. I think it would have to have some sort of financial plan set to it. And so I think that's something that the subcommittee would also look at, just to see if it's financially feasible as well. And so I'd just like to put that out, and yeah, would love to have Martin on the subcommittee and Jody as well, and if there's other volunteers, yeah.
That's why I was smiling at you, just because you have so much information on the tourism Bowen Island website, that we wanted to make sure that if that is something, like there would be alignment and synergy there and not.
Yeah, I'm, to be honest, I'm not sure we need an app, to be honest.
So maybe that.
I don't have the vision that you have, so I certainly can contribute. I just, at this stage, I don't have a vision. Yeah, so I don't know.
Okay, fair enough, Jody. The person who's actually designed the app, I think, would have some time to be on the committee, and maybe what we could do is just, you know, investigate that business model and see what would be part of it, and then report back and, you know, for greater conversation amongst the committee members.
Can I suggest that the Newcomers Guide draft review subcommittee would comprise myself, Jamie, and Jody? And let me throw out that it would be not a huge job. It's already, a lot of it's done. But the way you two are positioned, I think, in the community would be a great set of eyes to take a look
To talk about
at.
ferry etiquette?
To talk about ferry etiquette, and then that review, whatever the red pending would happen, would go to everybody, or unless somebody else is jumping in, but.
What's your
I'm sorry, what?
I said, what's your biggest ferry? This seems like a pressing information.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, what is it?
Oh, everything.
Number one.
It's everything.
Let's not
It's
open that
everything.
box now.
Parking in the yellow hatching, idling your car in the winter and in the summer, because in the winter it's too cold, in the summer it's too hot. I could go on and on.
Hello?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Donovan has his hand up.
Oh, yes.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me or not. I'd be more than happy to chair the app committee.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, he's the lead. Sorry, Kristen, you're not the lead anymore.
Oh, that's okay.
Bye-bye.
That's all good.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry we missed your hand.
No, that's okay. It wouldn't let me unmute anyway, so it's all good.
But Cooper, you're also maybe the newcomer guide set of eyes there?
Not a whole lot of interest there.
Not an interest, okay.
I'll do that.
Oh, because I was, yeah, someone who's been new recently. Okay.
Say, it would make sense if we're trying to aggregate sources of information that maybe newcomers guide is a subset of the Owen app.
No, I don't have time for technological depths. We need to get this project done. It's been on the work plan for a while, but we'll definitely meet back at this table.
Yeah, I think Steph, you were saying that it's moved along, it's in good shape, so I think the Bowen app is gonna be a little bit more complex, for sure.
I can go on to help review that draft as well.
Is that Roger?
Yes,
Yes, it is.
Okay, excellent.
great.
Thank you.
Steph, does the uni own that newcomer's guide? Where does it live?
Yes.
It does, okay, because before I moved here, I read it.
Yeah.
I did, actually. Yeah, I did, from start to finish, because
We're looking.
I had no idea what to expect moving here. So, and I still moved here after reading it.
Is there something in it about, if someone's lights are flashing, it means that they're on their way to fight a fire? That's great.
Or that I love.
Stuff like that in there, like, yeah. Hmm?
No, we also read it just before coming and it actually made us even more excited to come.
Oh,
I
yeah?
remember this part about driving slow and taking it easy and I was like, yes.
Oh,
It
wonderful.
doesn't need any revision, so
Just need some updating, I think, but.
Yeah.
Or you're saying to put a little bit of more negativity in there, so let's back up?
Oh!
Be more realistic.
Not like, on the other hand.
Well, it's all right, just play
It's an
our.
awful one, but. Steph, can you send that to that newcomer's guide? Email it?
No, we need to work on it with an invisible form. Of course, yeah, whenever that happens.
When was the last time it was updated?
I don't know that it has been, I think just since it was conceived, but the updates, like I think this work, there might be a quick reach out. Councillor Nicholson reached out a year and a half, 2 years ago and got some information from Facebook that our communications coordinator has applied. But that's still been a couple of years, so I might do one more shout out for feedback.
I may even have a volunteer that might want to work on that.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I have an idea for the Bowen app that I'm not particularly interested in. If you add IP cameras on the ferry line as part of that,
Okay.
that can be your entire business model right there, because people would pay for the ability to see the ferry line.
Behind the paywall,
dangerous one.
behind the paywall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So question for you, I'm trying to wrap my head around the camera thing, because if you live in Blue Water and you're aiming for the 8:30 ferry and you look at a camera at, I don't know, 7:45, is it really going to help you? Like, because within,
So every other island has them, and like Quadra Island, for example, that's in our cabin on Quadra was like about 45 minutes away. And we would, and it was helpful because it gives, especially on busy weekends, because you can gauge the overloads and you can gauge the.
So it may not help you for that immediate.
It's the flip side. I go the other way. I always end up being too early because I'm expecting there to be a lot, and then I get there and then I'm the fourth car in line. I could have, like.
What? I'm saying to my husband, what could you have been doing at home? Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's on your phone, just do it in the car.
how often does the ferry go on Quadra then?
Now it goes every 30 minutes.
Oh, just, okay, fine. So I mean, we've got every hour, so, and I'm just saying 20-minute drive from the golf course or whatever. I'm just not sure.
I think it's probably the most requested thing.
Yeah,
in-
it is.
I know, I'm just not sure, because I
For
see,
information.
It'd be so beneficial.
Yeah.
I see the ferry lineups fill up within 5 minutes, they can. if there's a line of cars coming from the western side and stuff like that.
I mean, like an IP camera costs like $50 and attach it into an app. You just need a business owner to be like, I'll power it and plug it in and attach it by Wi-Fi and we're good to go.
Well, we love, local economy, like it's a business opportunity.
But
Okay,
you do need two because you need one down and then one pointed up.
I'm really interested in the response from the islands to your behind the paywall idea. So.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of merit to the camera idea, and as has been said, it's very trivial to set up.
True.
Will bylaw then be able to enforce ferry etiquette?
Yeah, I don't like that. Not on the agenda, you guys.
I think we're going outside of the agenda
I
here.
love that this team is back together, because I was there like months and months of energy.
well, this is, we just want to, yeah.
No, but you can
You might-
screenshot it and post it on Bowen Island.
You could catch people taking cars from the pub.
Okay, so just to do a recap, if I may, because we're now at time, we're close to time, and I do want to keep this, if we can, on time as much as possible. We have a policy development subcommittee, Bowen App subcommittee, newcomers guide subcommittee, circular economy subcommittee.
Well,
So that is leaving, who else?
that's Martin leading.
Martin,
Martin. Oh, that, okay, what,
and sorry, the newcomers guide, who's taking the lead with the newcomers guide?
well, I feel like I will
Okay,
because,
thanks, Steph. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Circular,
scared that you had my name first there.
actually, sorry, Roger should. I will do it, Roger.
circular economy then?
I will put my name in circular economy though.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Roger, your hand was up?
He's putting his name on something.
Yeah, just saying, put my name right.
Okay. And in terms of leadership, the circular economy?
Martin?
Martin? Yeah.
I volunteer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Annual Business Summit. This was something that, I think it's a sometimes annual business summit, but we did talk about potentially having a summit in the fall. So there's still quite a bit of time to organize it, but it does require a fair bit of coordination. Is that of interest to any members of the committee? Well, I guess first of all, is this a subcommittee is this an initiative that we do want to do? Do we want to organize an annual business summit? We don't have to. We do have some budget for it if anybody wanted to take the lead. If we do want to do it, I think having a subcommittee set up with the logistics would be helpful.
I think it's too soon for this year. Like it's too close.
It's too close.
2025 maybe. You don't even really know what it's for and who we're inviting and what's the topics and.
I think it would be similar to what we've done in the past where there's a keynote speaker.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Circular economy.
What's it too close to?
It's just too soon,
Like if we were to,
like fall 2024.
I think to do it in October.
But maybe not. It just feels like it's a big.
I think they were kind of done in October or November, weren't they?
Yeah, we've done them in February or in November, and like that's normal time.
Yeah.
But
Well, if the OCP is being reviewed or something, or if and one of the things is circular economy, that could be, because a lot of people don't know what that means. That could be a good alignment.
I just want to clarify process-wise, when you mentioned budget, we actually do need to do a quick recommendation on the budget.
Oh, yes, that's true.
That we've put together from the conversations. We don't need to nail down this section necessarily, but yeah.
I think the business summit will take a lot of work to execute, right? And I think there's a lot of meat above that, so.
Okay, so I'm hearing like there's a concern in just not having the time, not having the resources available.
When was the last one? It was before COVID, correct? Yeah, it's been a while.
And is
I mean-
is it focused on local businesses or?
Yeah, no, it's actually, the two that I attended were at the lodge, and anybody associated with business attends, and they have a theme, and there's interaction, and they were lovely.
But it's local, it's local.
It's local.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
the only reason why I think it's worth really looking at carefully is that it is one of the most tangible things we can do for the business community. That, you know, for businesses on island, you know, what value do they see from the Economic Development Committee? And I actually think this is one thing that because I think every time we do bring the business community together, they say how much they appreciate networking and getting together and but understanding that it is a resource thing, I personally wouldn't mind, like if there's a support of the committee to do it, I will take that on. That I'll be the leader with the business summit and see how far I can get. I could always report back. The subcommittee could report back and say, indeed, we do not have enough time. But I don't mind taking it on and just qualifying it and taking it as far as I can.
You've got a new community center to use.
I was just gonna say.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's true.
That would be
Which is a
good
great
thing
fit.
for it,
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, really.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea. I agree.
Has she won you over? How are we doing over here?
If you volunteer and say you're gonna do it, then I'm sure. I think it's a great idea if we have the
Cooper for
resources.
lead.
There's $4,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, I think that's a good point, then maybe just give it a shot and,
So annual business summit,
I would need to be,
well, yes,
You need-
yes,
you need-
I need you, Steph.
if it's, unless it's Liam,
Yeah,
you need some staff over there.
yeah. If there are any other volunteers, you can let us know now or later.
I can, but not for a little while right now.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe as we get closer to the event.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. All right, great. Now, any other subcommittee? Is there another
The rural
initiative?
islands, so that got swallowed up somewhere?
Well, I think we're putting it under circular economy.
Okay, that's fine, okay. Okay, so
But the workplace feasibility, is that a structure?
that's us. We're done. We just haven't done the
Do you know,
report
we
yet.
have to do
We
the
just have to do the
report.
report.
Yeah, here I'm saying I'll take on the annual business summit. I've been procrastinating about this report for 6 months.
We did a lot of engagement work and feasibility study, and we've come up with, it's not super feasible, but there are some recommendations.
It'll have to be a private sector initiative. I'm gonna put that on my to-do list. Okay.
Just do the.
Okay.
My apologies for that, and I hate missing.
Yeah, because there's.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so we'll do this budget, then we need, I forgot to put the recommendation in the agenda. We need council to approve. That is not what you want to see. What you want to see is, but can they see it? Yeah.
Okay.
So you see that?
Yeah.
Do you want to review it or do you want me to?
Yeah, so this is sort of our draft budget for 2024. So, and I think this is kind of a rough draft that we did. We are asking for $12,000, 4,000 of which would go to a business summit. The new app, oh yes, okay, so this is all the policy work for that committee. You've got $500 to spend on here to have, no, I'm joking. Yeah, so, you know, in terms of any incidentals that you would need with engagements around the policy work, there's budget there. BC Buy Local campaign, I think this is a sort of an earmarked amount that we typically contribute. Also the, as is the newcomer guide, I think that is just a sort of a set amount that goes towards the newcomer guide. The strategic planning session, I think that's sort of part of the orientation session that we had earlier this month. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. Sort of leading to the Rural Island Economic Forum, both the membership and the forum attendance. I think that amount is based on what we spent last year, Martin?
Yeah, only there's not gonna be a forum this year in person.
Oh, there is, oh, it's all remote. Or is there not going to be one at all?
Virtual one for sure,
Okay.
but
Well, I think that's good because I think our summit is a little bit light on money.
I was just gonna say, I don't think
Yeah.
4,000 will do it if we're
if we're gonna do meal like we did previously with inflation.
Well, and a keynote speaker, I've learned is quite expensive, so maybe, I mean, I'd like to keep our ask to still 12,000. I think we will be able to spend that amount. I said to Steph, that's my goal, because I think for years we haven't spent our full budget, but we will spend it all in 2024. So
Save room for some IP cameras somewhere in there.
maybe, okay.
I'll buy them myself.
Well,
Maybe I'll move up to
We're
an
not talking about it anymore.
Maybe we should bump up the policy budget then to $1,000, you know?
Yeah, is there a
So
capital
a little
budget?
bit there for, I don't know if you need to go up, Martin, or I've left $855 under.
I can't remember what the membership fee is. but
Well, we have it as 325. Oh, no, that's something else. Okay, yeah.
There might be a cost if it's a bit virtual
Yeah,
thing,
it's
it might
just- yeah.
cost a little bit. I don't know.
Which ones are free usually?
I don't know.
I can come back with a figure
Well,
We're just
by
ballparking here, I think.
yeah, this is all just a ballpark so that we do have money allotted. If you don't spend it, Martin, that's okay. If you don't, as long as you think that it'll be no more than $850, then okay. So then maybe should we put a motion on the floor to approve budget 2024?
Want to discuss it?
Or would anybody like to talk about it first? Sorry, I'm rushing. Yeah,
Any objections?
any objections, any ideas? Okay. Then do we all approve budget 2024 as shown here?
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. And any for seconder? Thank you, Martin. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Roger. So motion carried to approve the budget.
Okay.
Great. So we have 7 minutes left, and Martin, I know are we gonna do it next time? All right, we'll do it next time.
We always
There's
do
a
that.
theme, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna bump
We
that
should
to the next
start with
meeting.
that next.
Yeah, exactly, that's what we're gonna do next time. Moving on to new business, election time.
Okay, so I mentioned in the email that Kirsten and Marcus put her name forward for chair, but you can fight her for that if you'd like. And Sat, who looks like we've lost to the palm trees, has put his name forward for vice chair also. Something that is still open to you, but just want to let you know that they've done that.
Perfect, let's vote.
Okay.
100%.
Okay, thanks.
We will move that, seconder. Jody, and any discussion?
Unanimous approval.
I think I'm supposed to ask 3 times if there's anybody else who wants their name
We
forward.
heard it 3 times.
Okay. All in favor? Carried unanimously.
Yay, okay.
So that's a housekeeping item where I need to apologize for how confusing this recommendation is. It seemed like the way to capture fairly confusing series of events, which was sort of an email vote by this group, and then at a different level, course correcting took place. That was beyond our control, so that's sort of captured. And so ultimately, because we did vote by email, we need to ratify it. But the recommendation never actually did go to council, so that's all in there, and can we just acknowledge that that took place?
Yeah.
Mover by Brian.
Here. Second by Cooper. All in favor? Passed. And more housekeeping items.
Oh, can we talk about the meeting schedule?
Oh, yes, okay, so if we could just jump to the bottom, we just think it's helpful if we can just earmark a day in advance, sort of when the committee meets, rather than doing the whole doodle poll every month. So what we looked at is sort of the last Wednesday of the month. I know this meeting was at 4 o'clock, maybe it's easier at 3 o'clock, maybe we are at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, it was at 3
Yeah, I think we were talking about does 3 o'clock work, is a later date, like 4 o'clock easier for those on committee. We just thought we would throw that out, but interested in any thoughts or ideas on the dates listed there. Does Wednesday at that time work for the committee members?
I like having a designated, monthly date.
Makes things a bit easier.
I wouldn't be able to make the 28th because we're with REAP in Anaheim for that, so.
Okay.
The only one that doesn't, but if we can shift it, it would be great, otherwise. Maybe
Okay.
So maybe keep these dates with the exception of February 28th and maybe find an alternative date? Okay.
And then there's no March, or December, just, well, no August. Just with the, Lions Council would like there to not be, 10,000 committee meetings for them to attend through the year, so we just try to keep the numbers a little bit lower. Yeah, so.
It will all be, can all be attended by Zoom as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what we heard at the orientation session is that we prefer in person, but we will do in person and Zoom for those who find it challenging to get here in person.
Appreciate
Okay, thank you. Okay, well then if we're just to say we're all comfortable with Wednesday, 3 p.m. at the dates listed below, with the exception of February 28th, where we'll do a little.
What's the absolute worst time for me based on our last poll, if you recall, but.
That's why you got a phone call.
So Cooper, what works for you time-wise better?
I know
It's just
it's
earlier?
not gonna happen, but
Just sort of like an
so I may be intermittent attender, but it is what it is.
We could change them up every time.
Do we want to put out there on the table like a time that works better for you, Cooper? We could take a look at.
I honestly don't remember whatever I put in the doodle. I looked at my calendar for
This was based on the, round table at the workshop.
I mean, earlier is better for me, basically. I understand.
What does earlier mean though? Sorry.
Like
1.
1 or 2 or something like that.
2 o'clock? 2 o'clock would be good.
Sounds good. Good.
Yeah. 2 o'clock? Jody, does that 2 o'clock?
I personally like, I personally like later in the day. Sorry, it's just one.
I can make either.
You're flexible, Mark?
But changing times too, if we keep the one day and then change a
Exactly,
few
that's
different
fine.
times,
Yeah.
why don't maybe consider that?
Can you make it earlier from 1?
Yeah.
That wasn't in my
Do it
notes.
online, the folks online. Roger.
I know
think Roger's
Sat, I know
Sundays
Sat said last time he
open.
likes later.
I mean,
Oh, yeah, Sat and Martin were the ones who were, I thought, but, okay.
yeah, I mean, basically after 2 p.m. I'm good. The 1 o'clock.
Ish.
It's sometimes can come.
And Roger, what are your thoughts on changing the 3 o'clock time to a 2 o'clock time?
Yeah, I'm fine, as long as it's in the afternoon, actually, it's fine.
Well, then I'm
I'm okay with that.
okay, thank you,
Because Sat's
Counselor.
in Hawaii. I'm just gonna do that to him.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you get.
Yeah. That's what you get in Hawaii.
When you go to Hawaii.
Actually, I'm sitting in Costa Rica right now, so.
Yeah, but you're still online.
Yeah,
That's the one
that's
who's.
Yeah.
Sat's in Hawaii, is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Right now? Oh.
Yeah, okay. Well, then,
They're not showing their picture.
Yeah.
With beach.
Should we-
Margarita.
I'm gonna suggest that just to make a change then to 2 o'clock, so the date's below but at 2 o'clock, if that works for everybody.
And we'll change for, actually, since we're doing this, so February 28th, can we do that on March the 6th instead?
March 6th,
Mm-hmm.
so our next meeting would be March 6th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Feb 28th is March 6th now.
Yes.
Yeah. Which gives some work for anybody who's on a subcommittee to maybe do a bit of research, get some information together so that we can expect then on the agenda on March 6th that there would be a report coming from the various subcommittees. Even though it's very preliminary, maybe not much has been done, but I think in moving forward with our agenda, we're going to have that regular cadence of subcommittees providing updates. Okay. I think we've made it. We've made it, Steph. 5 o'clock. Look at us go. Look at us go. Well, listen, thank you, everybody. I'd like to adjourn this meeting. If there's any other,
Thank you, Roger and Councillor Hinton.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
For attending. Okay.
Kristen,
Have a great night.
standing up to be